all of part two. I thought I'd do a bit of an end of term review for the PAD portfolio. Again, it may not be a piece of work that you've been thinking about, or you may have been thinking a lot about it. I know some of you have, because I've had a few comments or some emails from people with quite certain questions, but it's a good point to take stock at the end of part two now that your exams are done. I'm sure you're all really happy about that, and obviously good luck with your results coming out in the not too distant future. But I'd like to have a bit of a recap, kind of say where you should be up to at this point, just so that you can start to plan moving forward as we start getting towards part three, which is kind of the business end of the portfolio. So congratulations on getting this far. It's always a big step when you make it through part two. That's kind of your halfway point in the whole degree, so it is a really exciting point. So well done getting this far, and again, best of luck with all your results that come out in the coming months. As I say, it's always a good time to take stock of the portfolio right kind of nowish, so that you can start planning yourself or your way ahead as we start moving towards part three. It's a good thing to assess how actually this year's gone for you as a whole. A bit of a reflection on yourself. You don't need to write about that, but it's good for you to take stock of how you're doing and be honest with yourselves in terms of things that have gone well and the things that you found a little bit trickier. Obviously, it's been a difficult year for us all, but there should hopefully be some positives moving through this year. Now, the summertime's always a good point to complete any of the work that you have outstanding regarding the portfolio over the summer, okay? This doesn't mean that I want you to be working the entirety of the summer, okay? I do understand that you guys need some time off as well, and you'll be busy doing other things. Some of you may be having placements or doing other work, which is absolutely fine, or you have other responsibilities, but it's good to, if you've decided to leave some of your portfolio for the summer, is you start thinking about how you're going to do that, okay? Again, any of the part threes that you would have spoken to will have said, do not leave this to last minute. You will only annoy yourself, okay? Get it done when you can, okay? It's a big step, it's a big assessment, so you can't do it all in a couple of weeks, okay? So for those of you who've decided to leave the majority of the portfolio work until the summer, which again is fine, I'm not going to judge you for that. I kind of say that it's right really to leave some stuff for the summer, because remember, the portfolio years don't run quite exactly the same as your academic years. But obviously, if you've decided to leave most of it to the summer, you need to do it over the summer, okay? You can't bury your head in the sand forever. It does need to get done at some point. You are learning useful skills by doing the portfolio work, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Again, future you will be so thankful for you being a little bit more proactive now than trying to cram it in when you get to next year, okay? There are no more hours in the day when it gets to next year than there are now, so again, be honest with yourself and appreciate that you're not going to have extra time to do portfolio work that you could have done earlier on. Obviously the timeline for the pad, so hopefully part one is in the green now, done and dusted, and not to worry about. If there is anything from part one that you look over and you're like, oh dear, I haven't done this, that should be your number one priority. Yes, it should have been completed in part one, so you may want to have a bit of a discussion with me about how you approach that, but we will try and get you caught up however we can, okay? You're obviously at this point, so part two, so you were kind of introduced to what documents you should be completing this year back in October. So I did an introductory session in PM2B, I think in the second week of term, sort of taking you through everything you need to do. So you may want to revisit that. And remember, you have until September of 2021. My years are a bit off here because this was the one that I used for part one, so I will modify that when I put them up there. So you don't have until September 2022, it'll be September 2021. But remember, you have until this September to complete the part two portfolio work. You could ignore the dates for part three, because obviously you'll be finishing it this year, so shift all your years 1 year forward from what I've got on this document, okay? So your part three documents will start in October this year. You'll have introductory sessions. Obviously part three is where the assessments happen. So you'll get a lot more information about how the assessments are going to work. and obviously the final portfolio will be due in March of 2022, so next year. Well, next calendar year in terms of that. Obviously, if you've spoken to any of the Part 3s, if you've seen the Instagram posts that they put up, please do not fall behind. You'll only hurt yourself and give you more stress and more things to worry about as you move forward into Part 3, okay? It's about taking the pressure off. My kind of ethos with lots of the way I approach how I talk you through sessions is how can I make you guys make your time as a student as least stressful as possible. And this is one of the ways, using some of your downtime to keep up with those documents, all right? Do not try and cram them all into Part 3. You're going to give yourself headaches doing that one, okay? So, that's my advice. And it's the advice that students would give you. If you've spoken to any of the now Part 3 or Part 4s, they would tell you exactly the same thing. If they had put themselves in their shoes of them being in Part 1 or Part 2 now, they would approach this task very differently. So skip out the middleman and approach it how you think is most appropriate now. Okay? I thought I'd always put this in just to sort of reiterate how important something like a portfolio is, because sometimes, because you see it's been quite a lot of work, you don't get a lot back from it in Part 1 and Part 2 because it's not worth anything at that point. But the portfolios are really useful. Remember, you do kind of CPDs throughout your career. So it's about gaining some of those written skills so that when you hit actual having to do CPDs for real, you know how to do them. But it's all about developing those reflective skills. Now, you would have been developing those reflective skills kind of probably without knowing it slightly, but think about all the revision that you've done in the last few months. Revision is a reflective skill. You're reflecting on the work that you've done. You're reflecting on knowledge. The portfolio is a way about you developing that skill, thinking about the sessions that you've been along to, and thinking about what's important from what you've learned in those sessions. What you'll find is reflection really helps with retention and understanding of information. If you read something once, it may go in one ear and out the other, or go in through your eyes and then not into your brain. The more you think about a topic, the more you engage with it, the more likely you are to retain that information. And this is what this reflection is all about. This is why we're getting you to do it from this early stage, because it gets you into the mindset of, I'm not just doing a session for the sake of it, I'm doing it for a particular end cause. If I reflect on that, it goes into my brain, I understand it, and then when I do need to show off that skill, it is there for me, okay? So it does improve that retention, okay? Practicing this sort of reflective skill. It's always there to sort of make you feel a bit more integrated into the profession. Okay, so as you'll know that within things like the CPDs, there's a huge flexibility in what you're able to write about to make it so that you can write about the things that interest you or the skills that you think that you need to develop. It gets you to learn a lot more about pharmacy on your own as well. And again, not just being sort of fed what we think you need to know. Lots of you are working in pharmacy already, or have worked or have been on placements or have been around pharmacy. So use this to try and integrate yourself even more and show off how that integration has worked. It does allow you to learn about topics that you find specifically interesting or knowledge that you think that you'll need going into either your future studies or as a pharmacist in the future. So it's good for you to develop and think about what it is that you want to learn. We all have different interests. If I was to write a topic about a topic, it would be very different from some of you or my colleagues. So it's good for us to think about the differences, the things that we find interesting and why we think that's important to us. It does hopefully help you to develop some sort of management and organisational skills. You're having to organise a fairly big piece of work, not completely on your own. I am here to guide you, obviously, but again, it's a lot more self-directed. And that self-directed takes discipline, it takes self-management, it takes sort of time management skills, and that's what we're looking for in you guys. So you are developing some of those sort of softer skills that you can then develop and show off. And then when it gets to part 4, when you're doing your projects, for instance, you'll be like, oh yeah, but I know how to structure a project because I've done a fairly big project over the last 3 years, and it will help you managing all the documents that you have. It's a good way for you to record all the important sessions that you've been to. So again, you and even I forget what sessions I've been to from time to time. I actually keep a record, and this is off my own back. This isn't one that I'm doing for any particular reason, but I do keep a record of important sessions that I've been along to because it helps me go back and say, I've done this, this, and this. This portfolio allows you to do that. So think about all the IPs that you've done. We get you to make a note of those because they're important sessions. If you need to go back to look at the information that you'd learned, it's all there and available to you. Finally, is a good way to show off your achievements. Lots of students, and I see completed portfolios every year, and it kind of blows me away sometimes the amount of work that some of you guys do outside of the course. And it's really nice to see how much you engage with communities, the profession, taking pride in being a student and work. And it's really nice to see what you guys have been up to. So you can really show yourselves off and showcase yourselves as students to me and your colleagues. And it's something to be proud of at the end of the day. So what do I need to do now? Okay, so this doesn't necessarily change each year, but again, if you're looking at like, okay, let's draw a line under everything now, what do I do today to help myself approach my portfolio? Well, you need to review the work that you've done and make a list of any documents that you need to complete. That is the key thing. Again, there are checklists in multiple places in the portfolio, and I'll show you where they are in a second. But it is important that you look at what it is that you need to complete. Okay, don't just take that for granted. Don't bury your head in the sand either. If you've got stuff to complete, just because your list might be quite long, you're never going to approach it unless it's out in front of you. Then set yourself a plan about how and when you're going to complete those documents. Again, you've got up until September or the end of September to do these, so you can space them out. If you want to front load them and do them earlier on, sounds like a good idea to me, but again, you can space it out depending on what you're up to over the next few months. Actually start to work through those lists of outstanding documents. Once you've made the list, and again, I can fall foul of this sometimes, I'm making lists and then not actually following through with them. But two, when you've made that list, make sure that you do actually go and do the documents, okay? A list won't do itself. If you want to at this point, you can actually start to compile your e-portfolio as well. Again, I've got an instruction video that you can follow, and again, it was made available to you last year. So some of you might have started to compile your e-portfolio within the actual template itself. If not, we can do this in part 3, and I'll have some sessions that will take you through it again as well. But I think a lot of you will be able to do this sort of self-directed. Once they're in your kind of e-portfolio template, you don't need to touch them again in reality. You don't need to look ahead to part 3 unless you particularly want to. So it's not a point at which you need to start doing your part 3 work early, nothing like that. But if you want to have a look at what's expected of you, you can do. So you can do that more of an interest than anything else. I don't think there are any dramatic changes in what's in the part 3 list. So if we jump across just to Blackboard, I always like to do this. Remember your student development portfolios mainly over here. If you want the intro session that I did with all the videos about what you need to do this year, so a kind of more in-depth version of what this is, that's in PM2B. It's going to be in your lecture material, autumn term. I think it's in week 2. Yep, PADP for part 2. That's my kind of intro session taking you through all of that. You'll go to the student development portfolio most of the time for the information that you need. If you need to review any things from part 1, go here. Just be aware that that current list for part 1 might be slightly different to your list just because there's been a couple of small changes. So again, use your part 1 list, which is actually in your part 2 documents. I'm just going to go into student view just so it looks exactly as you would see it. So you'll go to part 2. Here are your requirement lists for part 2. Again, all the lists are actually under each of the sections as well. So find it however you like to. This was a very sort of overviewy kind of list of documents that you need to complete. You can go to here. I've got your refresher lecture there as well, not the video. So if you want the video, go to PM2B. But if you want just the PowerPoint itself, it is here. I've done a couple of checklists, so if you want to keep up to date and just tick things off you can do it here. So I've done a part 1 to part 3 checklist. I don't think this will have changed, but it has all the documents you should need to do. There's also a part 1 to part 2 that you may want to have a look at first as well, just to make sure your part 1 work is done. Also here I've put some video guides. So these would have been the same video guides that I made available to you last year. So these video guides are for a bit of an intro to the PAD portfolio, how to complete a CPD, how to complete a monograph, how to complete your CBA workbook, and how to build your e-portfolio. So I've done YouTube videos which are very much kind of step by step how you should approach each of those individual tasks. So if you're struggling in a particular area, you may want to go back to those. Again, I've seen there's been lots of views on these videos, so I think people have been using them. If you've forgotten where they are, that's where they are. Okay. Any questions, you can use your part 2 Padlet. I think annoyingly, SOSUN's the only one who has current access to this in terms of replying to your questions. So if you have specific questions, I'd probably say email them to me, but SOSUN will follow up ones especially around CPDs on that part 2 Padlet. All your templates are going to be in your document templates. Okay, so you started in 2019, so you'll be using these templates. These were actually for last year's because they were doing paper versions. So you can actually completely ignore this, but all your templates are going to be in here. So you've got all your CPD templates, all your reflection on learning, reflection on feedback, error logs, all your monographs, and all those sorts of points. Remember, if you want to know a bit more about each of the sections, you click on the particular section and it tells you a little bit about what it is, and then you've got things like your CBA documents there, self-development. I've got the longer list of all the things that you need to complete. So use that sections and get used to navigating through them. I'm not sure enough people used it in enough depth to really find everything that's in there. I've tried to make it as straightforward as possible. If you find navigation difficult in the Blackboard page at all, or you have any comments, please just send them to me. I'm more than happy to change things. I kind of took the portfolio off over, and I've kind of kept it along the same lines as it was done before with some tweaks. But if there are things that you would like to see change in terms of the layout of your Blackboard pages, do let me know, and I'm more than willing to engage a little bit more with you about it, and we can have a chat about that particular point. So that just leaves me to thank you for listening. The key thing is see where you're at this particular point and what you need to do to have all of your Part 2 documents completed by September of this year. So when you move into Part 3, you don't need to start doing your Part 2 work, and you can start from a completely clean slate. You will thank yourself 1,000,000%, I can guarantee it, if you can do that now. So a bit of hard work now will help you no end. If you do have any questions over the summer, do send them to me. Again, I'm off, I do have some annual leave over the summer, but I am working the majority of it. So again, I may not be able to respond instantly like I do sometimes, but I will get back to your questions and do answers when I can. So please do email them through to me. Obviously, please do enjoy your holidays. This isn't me saying that I need you to do writing CPDs every day of your summer break. That's not the plan. You have 6 CPDs to write. You can do one every 3 to 4 weeks and you'll get them done before the start of term. So it's that kind of level of work that you need to put in, but just do not forget about it. Please, 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 please do not forget to do these documents. They are very, very important. And again, as I said, Part 3 version of you will thank you no end if you get yourself a bit more prepared at this point. Do enjoy your holidays. Hopefully we'll have some nice sun over the summer, and hopefully things with the current situation continue to improve or get better. And then I'll look forward to seeing you all next term, where it's kind of the important portfolio checkpoints. So you'll have a lot more sessions with me next year regarding the portfolio. But let's get Part 1 and Part 2 completely done and dusted, so that all of you, I do mean all of you, can start Part 3 completely afresh and can concentrate purely on the work that you need to do. All right, thank you all for listening. Again, questions, send them through to me. Enjoy your summers, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.